I would like to invite Babloo Loitongbma. Babloo Loitongbma is the Executive Director of Human Rights Alert based in Manipur. Thank you.
Thank you, Lendro. I would basically dwell on the efforts to resist this law for the Armed Forces Special Powers Act. Why it is an unjust act, I would like to think on two fundamental grounds. One is the ease with which the military power has been used against a large section of the population for such a long period of time. We all know, of course, when police uses power, it's at a different frame of mind. It's more to maintain an order, and therefore police by training is supposed to use power at the minimum. There has to be a lot of restraint. Whereas military by definition is to overpower the adversary. And when this kind of power are used for half a century, Armed Forces Special Powers Act being enacted in 1958, the way in which it distorts the entire notion of democracy, when militarism is so inbuilt in that particular region for such a long period of time, where problems are not solved by hearing out each other, but by using this brute force, I think it has a huge impact on the population. Resistance of this was actually it didn't begin with Sharmila going for a hunger strike. The resistance of it began when this bill was placed in the parliament for discussion way back in 1958. There were two MPs from Manipur who of course opposed it tooth and nail, saying that this is not going to solve the problem, but this is going to complicate the problem even more. But there were also very well-meaning MPs from mainland India, particularly an MP called Hun-tré, who said that he raised a point of order saying that how can a central government in a federal constitution send its army without the state government requesting or the provincial government requesting that army be sent into it. And there are constitutional provisions wherein these military forces can be called in, and this can be used only when a state of emergency is declared. Unfortunately, in Armed Forces Special Powers Act, instead of using the words state of emergency, they said areas are disturbed, and therefore to contain disturbances, the central government needs to intervene and use its military might to do all this kind of acts, which has been so ably and aptly described by my former speakers. There were different forms in which people try to, but of course the majority of the parliamentarians followed the government line, and the government have used this primarily in the Naga Hills in the 1950s. But very soon, similar situation of armed expression of anger of the people came about in the Lusai Hills in the 70s, and so it was extended to the Lusai Hills, the disturbed area. And situation arose in the 70s in Manipur and Tripura, the former princely states, and in the 1980s in the Brahmaputra Valley of Assam, which is the main kind of plain of the northeast. And in the 1990s, a similar law has gone to Jammu and Kashmir. And now the big question that is in front of many the security thinkers in India, as well as a concern for the civil liberties movement there, is a similar going to come in this what is called the red corridor? Are the military going to be used? But this debate is also generating a very interesting debate. When this proposal to use army in the so-called Naxalite affected area, where there are left-wing extremism coming in the central belt of India, where there is a much stronger insurgency compared to the northeast, the army officers responded saying that no, we don't want to be involved while dealing with our own people. And this is what really wakes us up in the northeast, look to Delhi and say, so who are we then? If you say the army should not be used against your own people, and for 53 years it has been used on us, and there is a national consensus at the political level that yes, use of army is good there, who are we then? Are we not an equal Indian? Is there two categories of Indians where one has to be controlled by the army and others cannot be controlled by the army? Tripura, for example, the insurgency has gone long time back. 2 years, the last 2-3 years, there's hardly any activities of insurgency there. Yeah. In Chhattisgarh and Jharkhand, I'm not saying that army should be used there, but there the level of insurgency is extremely high. 76 CRPF are ambushed and killed in one shot. Their army is not used. But in Tripura it is used, where there's hardly any incident of insurgency in the last 2 years. We can even extend it to 5 years. Now, why is Armed Forces Special Powers Act used in this? And in Tripura, again, it is very clearly seen that it is not just, if it is a Bengali area, there is no disturbance. If it is a tribal or the indigenous area, then there is disturbance. So this whole idea about disturbance is not, if we look at it very carefully, not an objective situation that is happening in terms of insurgency on the ground. Disturbance seems to be in the minds of the people who are wielding power in Delhi. And for them, this very suspicion of the other within our boundary, because they look different, they eat different, they are culturally different, they have a historical trajectory, which I think Somi has very well brought out, seem to be the reason why Armed Forces Special Powers Act is confined in certain areas and not to the, not just, there is not a very clear positive relationship with the scale of violence. The effort to get away with Armed Forces Special Powers Act was again put up when the Supreme Court for the first time started opening up what is called the public interest litigation, where individual public interested people can go and actually file to the Supreme Court, approach the Supreme Court for the enforcement of the fundamental rights. So way back in 1980, particularly after the post-emergency, India was in an emergency situation and there was an outrage of democratic rights, civil liberties movement in the late 70s. So by the 80s, many students from the Northeast who were studying in Delhi universities and GNU, the elite universities in the capital of the country, had a dilemma. On the one hand, they are exposed to all these debates, like the university debates on democratic rights, but when they go back home, they also see that lives are getting crippled because of this whole Armed Forces Special Powers Act and the military operations that are going on. So they approached the Supreme Court, and the first case was registered on the 10th of October 1980. For a very long time, the Supreme Court just slipped over this, and it was only in 1997, and that too when the UN Human Rights Committee has pulled up Government of India really seriously when India was submitting its third periodic report to the UN, under the International Court of Civil and Political Rights. And the committee has come out very clearly saying that when you use Armed Forces Special Powers Act, Government of India is in fact exercising the emergency powers of derogating certain fundamentally human rights without resorting to the procedure which are prescribed under the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. And of course, the Attorney General who was representing India came and said, well, no, but this is pending in the Supreme Court, and Supreme Court will have to adjudicate on this. But the Human Rights Committee requested the Government of India on writing in its concluding observation saying that when India examines the constitutionality of Armed Forces Special Powers Act, it should also examine the covenant compatibility of this act, how it violates the basic rights, Article 6, the right to life, the right against torture, right against arbitrary detention, and right against fair trial. But the Supreme Court simply ignored this provision, and the Government of India has not submitted its fourth periodic report, which it was due to submit in 2000. And of course, the Supreme Court very quickly came out with a judgment, which Mr. A.G. Rani, a very prominent jurist in India, have described as a shocking judgment. And he have called it by far the most conservative judgment that was in the annals of the Supreme Court of India. Where what the Supreme Court have basically done is look at the competence of the Parliament to enact such a law. And it says Army has its own internal checks and balances of how to use power and force, but and therefore the exercise of power to kill someone on suspicion is not therefore arbitrary. They have not invoked the provision of right to life, which so clearly states, even in the Indian Constitution, Article 21 of the Indian Constitution, was not even mentioned once in the entire judgment. So this judgment, which was pronounced on the 27th of November 1997, has really hurt many of us who have been working on this issue for a very long time. So what we have decided was to invite a very highly, a person of high integrity and who can exercise judicial mind, and to look at the actual human rights impact of this Armed Forces Special Powers Act on the ground situation, which the Supreme Court had in one stroke completely turned a blind eye. So we constituted a People's Commission of Inquiry 2000 and invited Justice Hospet Suresh, who from the Bombay High Court, who is considered as a judge of extremely high caliber. And as we were trying to organize this in Manipur, we looked for volunteers and interns. And one of the volunteers who came up and signed up and worked so hard on this case is no other than this person on whose memory and on whose struggle we have come to Harvard to discuss, Irom Sharmila. She was a very quiet woman. She was in the meeting, she would not be the person who would be sitting in the first row. She would be the person who would be somewhere in the middle of that corner. That was what she was. If she has a problem, she would not be someone who would raise her hand and come and ask a question in front. But she would quietly, come at the backstage and say, brother, I have a problem. What is happening? What is not happening? Why is it happening? Anyway, we did a 1 week of workshop, and then for 1 month, all our volunteers go to the newspaper office, get the information of cases, go to the families, and prepare for this whole inquiry to come about. Justice Suresh came on the 20th of October, conducted the People's Commission for 5 days, and Justice Suresh was absolutely clear. Irrespective of what the Supreme Court said, a sanction to kill can never be constitutional. And he looked at the realities in the situation and said, all the so-called do's and don'ts that the army headquarters had issued for the control of the army is followed and breached rather than compliance. And all of us were very happy. We submitted the interim finding of this report to the Union Home Ministry for kind comments. The Union Home Ministry has not even acknowledged the receipt of this report. And exactly a week after, on the 2nd of November, again, in Malom, Assam Rifle killed 10 civilians, including 63-year-old lady, 2 brothers. One of them happened to be even a Bravery Child Award winner, which the Prime Minister has given her in Bravery Child Award. 2 days immediately after this massacre, the Manipur government scared that there's again another outrage, and curfew was claimed. So the family members whose mother was killed in this firing cannot even go to the hospital to collect the dead bodies. On the 4th of October, Sharmila seemed to have gone to a bakery, eat a feed with a few friends as much as he can, saying that this is going to be my last food. 5th of October, when curfew was lifted, around afternoon, she came to me and said, brother, I'm going for a hunger strike. I mean, we taught her that Armed Forces Special Powers Act was wrong, but we never thought that she's going to take such a drastic action. I mean, I can't believe when he first said that she's going to go for a hunger strike. He said, see, Armed Forces Special Powers Act is wrong, but it's not something that's going to happen in a day or two. Why don't we settle for a judicial inquiry on this firing where 10 civilians have been? He said, brother, I'm sorry, I have taken the permission and the blessings from my mother, and I'm going for a hunger strike. We thought it's going to be a matter of few days, so we left everything that we didn't write the final report. We were all going after her, contacting the press, organizing solidarity. And next morning, she was picked up on charges of attempting to commit suicide. Within a few days, as her health was deteriorating, they force-fed her by putting a nasal tube into her whole digestive system, and every day they poured in 5 times liquid food. She's kept as a highest security prisoner in this country. Even a person who has been convicted for murder charges or all kinds of terrorist activities can receive visitors twice a week. No visitor can visit Sharmila unless and until it it is cleared by the highest executive of the state, the chief minister. There was a rally after 11 years of a hunger strike from Srinagar to Manipur to Imphal, where people from 12 states of India joined together in solidarity. When they came, he made a request to meet Sharmila. They were never given permission to meet. In fact, they were all arrested and put in police custody for 5 hours, for which we have filed a complaint to the National Human Rights Commission and the National Human Rights Commission, not to talk about taking action on them, have not even visited Manipur till date. On the other hand, in the United Nations, the Racial Discrimination Committee has stamped Armed Forces Special Powers Act as a racist law. Because under, if you are a party to the International Covenant on elimination of racial discrimination, if there is a racist law, there is a provision that one can invoke to urge the government to repeal. This procedure was invoked in 2007, and till date the government of India have not responded to the request of the Racial Discrimination Committee. Similarly, in the last UPR process, government of Germany, government of Canada and the United Kingdom have raised the question with the government of India, what has happened to all these human rights committees and various committees' recommendation to repeal Armed Forces Special Powers Act. Government of India's position is that this is upheld by the Supreme Court and therefore it will stand. At this moment, I'll just take 1 more minute. I understand I'm shooting out of time, but I think it is important for us to also realize that because of Sharmila's unique struggle, things have not gone completely unrewarded. For the first time, I think the debate on Armed Forces Special Powers Act has reached the highest level. The Prime Minister himself had made a public commitment in 2004 that this act needs to be replaced by a more humane act. Anybody who have looked into this act has come out with the same conclusion that this is too much, it has to go, it has no place in a democratic country. The same is echoed by Madam Navin Pillai when she made the first visit to India. And said this is a colonial law that used emergency power and it doesn't hold well with the new image that India is coming out with. The Law Minister, Lirupa Moily, has come to the same conclusion. Our Vice President, Hamid Khansaria, has come to the same conclusion. We are told that the Union Home Ministry has recommended a series of amendments to this law, but the matter is now holding up at the Cabinet Subcommittee on Security and they have not been able to take a decision on this. We are told primarily because the Defence Tree is vetoing any kind of change to it. I think India needs help on this. India needs help and India needs friends who stand for democracy and who say that military rule whatsoever, wheresoever, whosoever it is affected is not going to, the military is not going to call the shots in India. If we don't stop this now, and if central India also falls into the hands of the military, I think it might be too late for us to respond as people who love democracy, people who want to make sure that democracy survives in this very critical place in South Asia. And I think we need to give a helping hand to the Prime Minister. And I request Kennedy Center, please play your role, not just helping Sharmila, but helping Manmohan Singh keep his promise. Thank you.